So, what's happening, everybody? I am a Lipp Man. The other Lipp Man is here. I'm Jeff. He's Jake, but we're having some technical difficulties, as you just saw a logo over my face. And Glenn is not here. We have Textile Kyle in for relief. And I am wearing my Memphis Showboats shirt intentionally, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But first of all, thank you for joining the Lipp Men on the UFL. Oh, there's Jake. He has lost the power of speech. See, I don't know what happened, folks. It's like, you know, when he was a baby, we wished for this to happen, but not now. Maybe it was a 23-year delay on wishes. Maybe we've learned something new. But hopefully we'll get that straightened out. Nope, still nothing. But I'm going to keep vamping while you and Kyle are working through this. This is week 5 of the UFL. We are officially at the halfway point of the season. Can you believe it? Can you all believe it? Jake, show your excitement. Yep, there it is. Okay, there we go. All right, so let me give you the ratings for week 4. It was a weird week. We had St. Louis at Memphis on ABC, 954,000. Nothing wrong with that. Then we had Birmingham at DC and San Antonio at Michigan on Fox, playing against each other, meaning the shows were on Fox in different areas. And they gave us a combined rating of 951,000. Nobody is sure exactly what that means. And by nobody, I'm sure there's somebody out there who is, but I don't. Nobody I've spoken to, I can't get a straight answer from anyone on the internets or any of the other so-called experts. People are telling me that the NFL combines shows all the time. I don't really think that's true. I think they break it down by market, and that's how they figure out which are going to be games of the week and which aren't. I know for a fact that NBA and NHL games are graded individually. I know that from my other device or diversion, which is wrestling. And so the NHL and NBA are both on Turner Network. So, of course, we have to pay attention to all comparative ratings. Baseball, no idea. But anyway, I don't know if that means it was like 475 a game. If one game did 948,000, the other did 953,000, or if the game in the biggest markets just ends up doing 951. Whatever. If we ever get a straight answer for you, and anyone still remembers this week, we'll collect it. But it is sort of relevant because it happened again this week where there were 2 games going opposite each other, which seems strange to me in a new league where you want to get as many eyes as possible on it. And I'm not really sure if it's just bad planning or if it was something that was wished upon. But if this is something that they plan to do all along, it's just sort of weird. All right, the last game was Arlington versus at Houston. It was on Fox Sports 1, FS1. Only did 243,000, which is not great. However, as troubling as all of that sounds, it was reported that this is up 56% from other spring football last year, whether it was the USFL or the XFL. So, I mean, it may not look good to us from this side, but apparently it's not bad. And it's improvement from last year, which is definitely important. I'm trying to get us a TV person to talk about sports economics and returns on investment and all sorts of fun things like that, but I can't seem to make it happen for sure. However, next week we have booked 2 guests. I'm going to appear on their show tomorrow night. So we're going to have Charles Richardson and Jay Lacasinostro. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've just read his name. We haven't actually spoken it out loud. So I'm going to be on their show tomorrow night, and they'll be here next week. So unless I botch it up between now and then. So that should be fun. So we're doing a little bit of collaborations. This week was all intra-division games. So a lot of rivalries. I need Jake to get in here because I'm pretty sure.
Testing?
Yes.
Testing. Hello?
Yes.
Oh, thank the Lord. We made this.
I agree. Say hello.
How's it going? Wow. I can't believe that just happened. I'm still not really sure why this was not working, but we're back alive. I could hear myself loud and nobody else could hear me at all. It was very awkward.
Did you say anything interesting?
Just testing a lot.
Okay. Well, that's good. So I was just getting to the point where it was all intra-division games, and I was hoping that you kept record of our picks for this weekend, because I think I went 4-0 again.
And I believe you're correct. I took two shots in the dark, you might say, and they both fell flat on their face. I went 2 for 2, and at least we were in agreement on the 2 I got right.
Yep. All right, well, a couple little fun things from me. Booker T, the five-time world heavyweight champion, and his Reality of Wrestling promotion did a cross-promotional event with the Houston Roughnecks. Didn't help the Houston Roughnecks. I'm not sure anything can help the Houston Roughnecks. But Houston, we are teaming up. But Houston, you still have a problem.
Major.
We're going to have a discussion later in the show as to actually who is the worst team in the league, because I don't think the team with the worst record is actually the worst team in the league, though I don't really know how you can argue otherwise based on the numbers. But
and I think if we're talking about the worst team in the league, I'd also like to talk about the best team in the league, because I share the same sentiment on the opposite side of the spectrum there.
I think that you have a really solid case to make there, and I think you were tipping your hand by your shirt.
I didn't say anything.
All right, there you go. Well, I'm just that insightful that I can read these tells, like a poker master. So in injuries, we had E.J. Perry, the Michigan quarterback. He was put on the the IR. Probably went to the ER before put it on the IR. Mateo Durant also on the IR. Callahan O'Reilly, which is the most Irish name I've ever heard, also on the IR. And during the Birmingham game, when the game was well out of reach, one of their O-linemen went down with what looked like a pretty scary neck injury. So hopefully he's okay, but he was taken off on a stretcher. During the course of the week, there were transactions and signings. Obviously, there's always a ton in the UFL, but the Renegades released their kicker, Tyler Russolino. Memphis released their cornerback, Christian McFarland, which seemed to be a big surprise, and they signed cornerback DJ Daniel. Stallions linebacker and favorite Scooby Wright retired.
Surprising.
Well, some people say it's not surprising, but it surprised me. And Michigan picked up a backup quarterback from, I believe, Michigan State. And then there were a bunch of strange scratches. People that we were looking forward to seeing, we thought that they were going to become staples of their team. CJ Maribel, running back for Birmingham, was inactive due to a family matter. Anthony McFarland out of Maryland, a hot commodity, San Antonio. He was also ruled inactive. San Antonio had to play with their backup quarterback. Michigan had to play with their backup quarterback. Memphis, as it turned out, either had to or elected to put their backup quarterback in there. And Birmingham, did they start their backup quarterback, or did they just fail to start their starting quarterback some weeks this week? So it was a strange week there. But, Jake, I really feel like I've been doing way too much talking, a little bit of vamping. Why don't you give folks some of your thoughts or general impressions on our week 5?
I mean, you talked a lot.
I did.
But with that said, I think you deserve it because you did so much better than I did with the predictions. But with that said, I think that this week we saw some offense. I think we finally saw some high-scoring games. Jake Bates finally missed a field goal. He missed 2 of them. I think it was a week where some of the teams, I think, like you kind of started last week's episode with, I think we're starting to see their colors now. And I think we saw some of the teams that are really going to struggle. And I think we saw some of the teams that are really well put together. And I think at this point in time, as you mentioned, all these injuries, we're starting to see some of these guys step up, and we're really seeing the role that coaching plays. Because some of these teams are, you can just tell they're taking it levels ahead. They're using trickery. They're using the rules to their advantage, and they're using the full football field. And so I think this week we saw a lot of maybe more, I don't want to say the best games of all time, but we saw better games. We're seeing some good football by some of these teams, and we'll talk about them as we get into the games.
What hasn't changed, though?
Well, I don't know. I can't read your mind. What hasn't changed? A lot of things haven't changed.
Yeah, we figured out my biggest pet peeve of this league so far: missed extra points.
And we got a lot of those.
Exactly. All right. So the first game, actually, there were two games that aired simultaneously, but only one of them was on 89% of the markets, while the other one was on 11% of the market. So that's Birmingham at Houston on Fox. And Houston was at Rice Stadium. And I've been being told by Houston Roughnecks fans that there's no test of their attendance and their fan support until they get to Rice. Well, they had 6,285 people there, which I'm pretty sure is lower than the other weeks. So
Yep.
if all excuses are off the table, you had Booker T doing the spinneroonie. Queen Charmel was there. You had the stars of Reality of Wrestling, not Zilla Fatu, because he's not with them anymore. That's a shame. But I'm sure there are lots of exciting people. Zilla Fatu is part of the tribe, the Anoi. He's Umaga's son.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Umaga, who represented, I believe it was Donald Trump when Bobby Lashley represented Vince McMahon. I might have those back up during that match. But Umaga, Eddie Fatu, he's dead. Rest in peace. All right. So anyway.
Football.
Right. Football. Adrian Martinez was the quarterback. And for God's sake, whatever gods you believe in, Odin, Jesus, Yahweh, Buddha, I don't care. I hope this ends the discussion. Adrian Martinez must be the starter for the Birmingham Stallions.
Yep. I mean, Adrian Martinez came out like a bat out of hell, and he ran the ball up and down the field. He was like 131 rushing yards, and I think it's just clear that he adds just a whole dynamic layer to their offense that, unfortunately, Matt Corral, a great football player, just doesn't bring to the offense the same way. But this is your part of the segment.
No, you're 100% right. I couldn't have said it better, and it would have taken me a long time to do that. So we had our friend. This is where Maribel didn't play, but so they had a two-headed monster at least. And so Person Jr. he establishes himself early with a rushing touchdown. Houston does get the ball back just before the half, and it's a field goal. So this first half was, by the way, mixed extra point, of course, for Birmingham. So
what's new?
Yeah, exactly. So it's 6-3, and then we have a big run, the first touch for the year for Larry Roundtree the third, 37 yards. Then Roundtree finishes up with a rush TV mixed extra point. It becomes 12-3. Then we get a touchdown pass, and Houston's not doing anything. Reads to net, doesn't matter. Nothing is happening. Their offense is completely inept. Their defense, frankly, I used to say their defense was tough, but they really weren't today or yesterday, or really Saturday. Jay Sternberger, your guy, touchdown catch, extra point missed, 18-3. Houston maybe gets a break there's an interception thrown, and so it goes back to Birmingham. It's returned to the 27-yard line, and then Jojo Tillery had this incredible run where he intercepted Houston. Looks like they're marching, but no. And he runs it all the way back to the 27. He probably could have taken it to the house. Yeah, it looked like he popped his hamstring or something because he went out of bounds and started limping. So I hope there's nothing serious. I haven't heard anything on it, but it probably would have been a defensive touchdown.
Very easily.
Anyway, good for Person Jr. if you had him on your fantasy team, because he had a second rushing touchdown. And Martinez runs in for the extra point, a 2-point conversion here. So at this point, it's 26-3. We then see Chisholm, who has a really outstanding catch. I mean, I'm not 100% it was a catch, but it was ruled a catch. The officials' box said they ruled it a catch, and I'm not one to argue with them, but it was a really amazing catch.
I thought it was a catch, too. He had two really incredible catches today, this weekend.
Right. But they called the touchdown back, calling it that he was down by contact, which I actually think they were right about that. But the catch was so good, I would just give it to him. Anyway, it didn't matter. Fair there was assessment. What's that?
I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, it was clearly down on the one, but you just wanted it to be a touchdown. It was a very impressive play.
Yeah, but I guess the rules are the rules. Anyway, touchdown to Bowman, mixed extra point, of course. And on top of that, Houston had an offensive penalty. So it's 26-9 at this point. There's a mixed 59-yard field goal attempt by Birmingham, and it's halftime now, and it's 26-9. This game, the rest of the game was just a couple field goals. It ends 32-9. Birmingham is 5-0. Houston is 1-4. Argument that Birmingham remains the best team in the league. They're certainly undefeated. Certainly an argument that Houston might be the worst team in the league. I don't know. The only thing I can say about this game is that it was so out of hand so early that you actually could watch a good bit of San Antonio versus Arlington because they switched the game. But do you have any other impressions on Birmingham and Houston before we skip on over to Arlington, Texas?
Yeah, and I don't have too much to say, but I do want to give Houston a little bit of credit. I think Justin Hall, he showed that he's a very good receiver. And I also thought that Houston, for the first quarter at least, they were playing very aggressive defense. They were very violent. They were coming out hitting hard. And for whatever reason, it just felt like the second, third, and fourth quarter, they stopped with whatever it was that was working the best for them. I mean, whether it was the blitzing, I never really saw a quarterback spy on Adrian Martinez, which was just mind-blowing to me. And so I think from Houston's perspective, I think there are little things to take away from it. TJ Pleasure had a decent game. I don't know where Mark Thompson was. That was a big reason why I predicted them to win, and Mark Thompson didn't really play at all. I think he might have touched the ball twice. No, I'm not going to make excuses or anything for them, but I just don't think that it was as bad as the score was, even though they got destroyed by Adrian Martinez and his legs. And for Adrian Martinez, Jay Sternberger was a security blanket for him all game, and Deion Kane looked like an NFL quality guy. And I don't know, they put it together. They're 5-0. They've been playing great all year. I just want to see if they can keep doing it.
I think that's fair enough. I think you were being very kind to Houston, but there's no need. I mean, listen, if you can't get yourself up for King Booker and Queen Charmel, and you only have 6,300 people at Rice Stadium, I don't know what to say. Anyway.
Well, and you know what? And I got two more things to add, because if we're talking about getting up, Naval Clark, I made a note about this on my notes for these games. Naval Clark at the very end of the game had an unbelievable interception where they threw it to Kiki Chisholm again, and Kiki probably would have made a great play, got the ball in the end zone, but Novell Clark went up, got it, and before you know it, he's getting his face mask pulled out, and he still comes down with the play to get an interception towards the end of the game. And you mentioned Larry Roundtree. What I found the most interesting was his first two carries, you said 30-something yards, he got ran out of bounds, and then his second one was a touchdown. And what was crazy is they asked the coach, what do you want to see out of him? And he said, I want to see him get tackled. But he couldn't even do that. And so that was just funny to me. Great game by Birmingham. We saw Nolan Henderson play a little bit, and he threw an interception after a great drive, that interception I just talked about. But it was encouraging to see Nolan Henderson get on the field and get a shot to show what he has. And he looked all right.
Well, they need to let other people. The one thing I find interesting about all of the running backs is that they're all the second, junior, or the thirds. Like, none of them just have a last name.
Yeah. And now you see Frank Gorse Jr. He's undrafted. He might end up in the UFL.
There you go. I mean, even in another game that we're going to get to, obviously, we got Gallman the second as well. So, I mean, it's rampant in this league that these are second, third generation, same name folks. All right, so San Antonio at Arlington. So Arlington doing a little bit better for Texas. Now we're doubling up on the Texas. I know one is West and one is Central, but I know. I mean, they had a crowd of 10,283. Not bad, not great, not bad. Arlington, of course, is 0-4 going into it. San Antonio is a interesting team. Their backup quarterback is in Shrewsbury, Queensbury, Queen's Gambit. Quentin
Dormady.
Quentin Dormady. That's a fantastic name. That's a fantastic name for like the Princess Bride movies. My lord, Quentin Dormady. So he's there. Yeah, Lovett's playing a quarterback. Lovell, rather. He had 95 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. Now, for Arlington, I guess the good news is Luis Perez crossed the 1,000 yards passing. I think he was the first one in the league. Yeah,
you've lost all 5 games.
Yeah, well, I guess we just spoiled it. He did that all the way to an 0-5 record.
No shame.
There was a really weird interception that he threw with under 2 minutes left. I I don't know if he just misread the play. It's just I don't know how to describe it other than weird. It looks like he threw it like behind the receiver and behind the defender, and the defender sort of was able to go like this while his receiver's going this way in the wrong direction, and they just picked up the ball, which is, I guess, how interceptions happen. This game we had a San Antonio fumble recovery with just a few seconds left. San Antonio's defense looked really good. Maybe it's Arlington's offense looked really bad.
It's the Wade Phillips effect.
Yeah, this game had a weird score. One of those UFL scores, 25-15 at end.
Yep.
I'm not even sure it was that close, to be frank with you. There are people now, and I hope you'll give me credit for saying this a couple weeks back and last week also, that Bob Stoops is just not right for this league. The fire Bob Stoops, pitchforks and torches, the villagers coming after Victor von Frankenstein. Fire Bob Stoops is a thing.
I think maybe it's forced retirement. I think we should be a little bit more peaceful here. No pitchforks are needed. The guy has had an illustrious coaching career. He just wanted to have a nice retirement fund. Go play golf in the 55-plus neighborhood. But let's do it peacefully. No pitchforks.
Okay, wow. Listen to the Zen. You know how somebody's sort of given up is like Bob Stoops is typically a clean-shaven guy. He was not clean-shaven, and his beard is every bit as white as mine.
Style.
That's right. That's right. Look at all this. All right. So then we get an ESPN game, St. Louis at DC.
Oh, we're not even talking about San Antonio.
Oh, by all means, go ahead, because obviously I only was able to see the highlights and the bits and pieces. Well, it was about a quarter and a half that they showed on TV.
Well, I think we talk about kickers all the time, so we should mention that Taylor Russolino was gone. They had, I think his name was Nick Garisbe. He was their new kicker, and he actually nailed the first field goal and had the next one blocked. So surprise, surprise, we've seen a lot of blocked field goals, and I think that's something that we're going to continue to see until I don't know what it is, whether it's coaching or skill, but there's been a lot of blocks. And to go with that, we've been mentioning how there's terrible 1- and 2-point conversions. And I think in this game, there might have been the absolute worst 2-point conversion ever known to man. They did like a little double pitch back, and the wide receiver was supposed to throw it. And Corey Mayfield Jr. came in and stripped the ball and almost took it all the way to the other end of the field to get their own 2 points. But unfortunately ran out of gas. But I think you're absolutely right in your sentiment. I do think that game, a 10-point score differential doesn't really tell the story. I think San Antonio was in cruise control, and Arlington's 0-5, and it doesn't really surprise me. Luis Perez, he's not really throwing the ball very well right now, and they have weapons, they have talent, but it's just not working.
Do you remember the first show we did when Arlington was home? What the first thing I said?
I don't remember what the first thing you said was, but I remember that we thought that they would be decent. The world thought they'd be great, but there was some hesitancy there.
Well, I had an observation that was completely surface level. And I'm like, I hate their uniforms. Powder blue is terrible. And they're at home, and San Antonio's uniforms look like they were the home team. They had color going on, and then he's got these powder blue uniforms. It just looks like they're like baby blankets. And I don't know. I don't think that's really has much to do with it, but powder blue doesn't say tough football to me. I don't know. I just change your colors, Arlington. If you're not going to change your coach, change your colors. At least go to navy blue or something. I mean, at least Memphis has decent looking uniforms. All right. So ESPN game, St. Louis at DC. DC actually turning out a pretty good crowd, 16,058. So not bad. We have 2 games over 5 figures. That's all right. And the game opens up with a sack and a fumble recovery. Alrighty. So it's looking pretty good for DC, but not so much because they throw an interception. So St. Louis is back on offense. So right back.
Very quick.
Yeah, it's so quick. But I like defensive football. I know you do too. We're both, our formative football years for you are the Ravens. That's, my adult formative football years. But before that was the Giants and the Bears, mostly a Giants fan. But they were both, slamming defense teams. and back then Ken Norton Jr. and Deion Sanders would just switch teams to get Super Bowls for the Cowboys and the 49ers for defense. Anyway, so we
Defense
like
wins
that.
championships, and that sentiment carries into modern football.
Exactly right. So then we get a touchdown catch by Hakeem Butler, who is absolutely now my favorite wide receiver in the league. I texted to you that I want the Ravens to sign him. I don't know if that's possible. I don't even know if he'd really be good in the big leagues, but he's big, he's strong, he's fast enough. He's like 6'5", 6'6". I want this to happen. Can you help me make this happen? You used to write for like the Ebony Bird and stuff like that.
Quoted by the Ravens website twice, but I don't know. We're not going to go on a tangent about the Ravens, but I'm not sure if they need wide receiver help. But at the end of the year, he will be free to sign with any team. He was a third or fourth round pick by the Arizona Cardinals, and the only reason why his career didn't really get off to a great start was because he broke his hand in training camp as a rookie. So, I mean, this is a guy that definitely at one point had high NFL potential, and if it's not the Ravens, I do think somebody's going to scoop him up because he just outclasses the entire league. I mean, he's A.J. McCarron's security blanket, his deep threat, and everything in between.
Yeah, well, DaCosta. I mean, I know you just drafted the kid from North Carolina who's sort of in the same mold, but, this is like a more fully rounded version of it. You could probably get him for a 2-year contract. Anyway.
And competition, it always is good.
Right. And you know what they did? They had a 2-point conversion. So it's 8-0 at this point. DC gets a big sack, which turns into a field goal for St. Louis. This is the first of 3 field goals, but one of them was because, and this is not Te'amo's fault. He threw a ball to his wide receiver who tipped it straight up off his hands, both hands, and straight into a St. Louis defender's arms. He ran it back, and St. Louis, sort of their story, while playing very solid defense and moving the ball a lot, they couldn't convert their scores into anything other than field goals after that first one, and they let DC stay in the game. Now, DC looked like they were in the game for probably the first 2.5, maybe even 3 full quarters, and then like all the wheels fell off. I don't know what happened, but we got a rush TD from DC. They missed the conversion, so all of a sudden it's 17-6. St. Louis rushed their offense for, I don't know why. It was weird because commentary, it's almost like they told them what to do. They're like, well, St. Louis always wants to score, and I'm like, why? Just sit on the ball, just go slowly. Well, they didn't. They rushed, and then so they missed a 4th down conversion, so it was turned over on downs, and then DC tries to go for a 4th down conversion as well, and it turns out that they at the time were 2-9 in the league, and they were worst in the league in those kinds of conversions. So they ended up missing, and now they're 2 out of 10, so they're still worse in the league. And on top of that, they got themselves an offensive penalty in that as well. In any event, this halftime ends up at 17-12 with DC still somehow in the game, and I was exhausted, but actually, I mean, at least it was interesting.
And I think St. Louis, they similarly to the last game, they looked better than the score was. You could tell something was brewing, and without giving anything else, I mean, I do think DC, their defense was solid for the first half, but their offense is flawed, and that's the nicest way to put it. But I'll let you continue.
It really is the nicest. I thought you were going to go with atrocious. So they open up the second half and they drive down to kick a field goal. Matt McCrane misses his first field goal. And then DC on top of that, they lose a coach's challenge. So no more coach's challenges, and they lose a timeout. So strange coaching choices while they're still in the game, but behind against they would probably acknowledge as a superior team. DC starts on its own 2-yard line. Well, that's not going to go very well. They have, so obviously they don't do very much, but St. Louis, when they get the ball on offense, only converts this into a field goal again. So it's 20-12 at the end of the third quarter. There were a bunch of offensive penalties by DC. I'm not saying St. Louis played flawless ball, not the case, but DC had a bunch of offensive penalties when they needed them the absolute least, like a lot of illegal hands to the face kind of things.
And I think that's the story of their whole season is they're just sloppy. They have all the tools to be good, and they're the team that's beating themselves the most throughout the season.
Speaking of that, they get the ball back and they're sacked and a fumble, and then Butler gets a catch and he takes it to the 5. This is another one where it was a relatively short pass, but Butler just outran and dexterity. He moved around. He for a big guy, he's elusive, and he gets to the 5. Gallman
galloping.
That's a good word. That's a good, but galloping with like vertically and horizontally, like he can switch directions while he's galloping, which is like, even for a pro athlete, that's pretty impressive, especially one of his size. Gallman looks strong. He gets the ball. It looks like he broke the line. I think he did break the line. The ref said no, he did not. I disagree. It was a touchdown as far as I'm concerned. The coach did not challenge it. This became irrelevant because Gallman, they fed him the ball again, and he went right in like a baby. So rushed in, and they go for St. Louis. Goes for a 2-point conversion, but McCarron is sacked. So it's now 27-12. Then have an 80-yard pass and run to Butler. So 32-12, misconversion. It doesn't even matter. Any DC gets the ball back. They commit another turnover. Sailors has a TD run. I forgot he was even in the game. He was mostly quiet up until this point.
And he was their starter today or this weekend.
Yeah, we barely even saw it. And Butler converted for 3 points. And so it ends up at 39-12 there. But no, it doesn't end up there because there is another score. Willow scores a touchdown. So it's 45-12. That is the end game, 45-12. And DC was solidly in this game through 3 quarters, but everything just, once they lost it, I don't know if they gave up. I don't know if they just got tired. Disgraceful. So St. Louis, 4-1. DC drops to 2-3. Big division game.
And DC, their fans showed up. You said it, 16,000 fans. They were loud. And they might have the number 2 fan base to number 1, the St. Louis Battlehawks. And this was a game that they looked great. They faced some adversity and they overcame it. I think looking at DC, they had a guy in Malik Fisher who got 2 sacks. One was that strip sack at the beginning of the game, and then one was that sack that you just mentioned that kind of forced a field goal from St. Louis at one point in time. So shout out Malik Fisher. He had a very great game. And I also want to mention Blake Jackson. He was the return man for St. Louis. He had a couple explosive returns that allowed Sailors to start at running back out of necessity. And I think to give another little bit of credit to DC, because I thought Teamu played terrible. He had 4 turnovers, and he looked scared in the pocket. I mean, he looked best when he was out on the run, and they just didn't get him out on the run enough. But I think when you look at them, Kelvin Harmon had a very impressive touchdown catch. I think if you look at that play and put it in the NFL, it would never happen. With very short time, he could have just stepped out of bounds, got the first down, and stopped the clock. He decides to go inside in the middle of the field with like 9 seconds left in the half, stiff arms the guy, and just gets his way into the end zone very impressively. Kelvin Harmon is kind of Teamu's security blanket. I mean, they just don't have a lot going on there. But, I mean, St. Louis, I mean, you mentioned Hakeem Butler had the best game of his season. He's now the leading receiver in the UFL. And that really should not be surprising at all. And the edge rushers from St. Louis, they came to play. Pita Taumo-Penu, I still can't say that name right. He had a sack and 2 sacks and a strip fumble on one of them. And Travis Feeney had a great game. He was all over the field. So I don't know. I think I've been pretty harsh on DC, and I think it's kind of justified. And the 25-0 run in the fourth quarter for St. Louis is huge. And what I think was the craziest part about that is to end the game, both teams had backup quarterbacks in, and that just kind of tells you how the game went.
Yeah. And McCarron looked really good, looked in control. Your man, Jay Core, was in there. He got a few passes, but he wasn't even that involved. I think, who's the third receiver? Is it Aitman?
Well, they have Marcel Aitman, and they have who's the other guy that they have? They have one more guy that's very fast. I'm drawing a huge blank, so I'm going to cheat here.
That's okay.
Well, Darius Shepard, but he wasn't playing this week.
Yeah,
so
game. But yeah, no, I mean they haven't. If they're not going to kill you with one guy, they're going to kill you with another guy. I mean that offense
Absolutely.
looks dynamic. I mean the only thing I'm a little bit concerned about is the running game. Though last week Sailors did get 105 yards. I'm just not sure if that's the exception or the rule. But in this league it might
And
not
Gallman
matter.
too.
Yeah.
You got a little speed with a little power. It works.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and they have a very strong 4-1, and McCarron looks like a different guy from week one when he was seemed like he was a little bit pouty.
Yep. And it's because I think they're just playing more of a team. They're allowing him to make some calls at the line of scrimmage. They're trusting him to throw the ball downfield. The running game in spurts has been very successful. I think they're starting to figure it out.
Well, true story. I spoke to a guy today from St. Louis, and he told me that, yes, I was saying, oh, wow, you guys have the best fan base in the UFL. And he's like, well, that's not really what it is. I'm like, well, you sell the most tickets. Yeah, I mean, you seem to have a home field advantage. He's like, that's true, but it's really because it's like a protest for the NFL. We're mad at the NFL for screwing us. I'm like, okay, well,
sounds like a good fan base to me.
Yeah, I mean, you're still going to the games. You're paying for tickets. You're paying for parking. You're buying hot dogs and beer and pretzels and whatever. I mean, it still counts as if you're hate watching, you're putting your money where your spite is. But it was an interesting perspective. I don't know if that's correct or not. I'm sure he speaks for a lot of people, but it was an interesting thing. Nevertheless, it's sort of irrelevant. And listen, I see a lot of people going, the law is the law. So I don't think that's all for hate watching, but I don't know. Maybe we'll have him on the show sometime, and then we'll find out about that. Yep. So Sunday we have our Fox game, which is Michigan at Memphis. Okay, so I picked Michigan. This is before I knew what was necessarily happening with EJ Perry. I wasn't feeling so good about it with the IR. Memphis, I don't think they ever announced that they weren't starting Cookus. Not that I think the Cookus is so great.
I think he got hurt last week, so I think it was Troy Williams all the way, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just never listen. I follow a few of the blue checkmark reporters on that. I did not see that reported. It was a sure thing. The commentary seemed to be a little bit confused. Also, they said they weren't sure why Cookus wasn't in the game. I mean, I remember the sack and how he grabbed his shoulder or wrist, and every other game where he seemed to be having his knee injured. So I'm sure he's beat to hell. Anyway, Etling gets the start, and as you pointed out, Troy Williams gets the start, and Memphis starts out with the ball, and they have an early turnover, which is a fumble by their starting quarterback, Troy Williams. And right away, I'm thinking, well, maybe my Michigan pick is going to turn out to be okay after all, because while I think that Memphis is terrible, the thing about them that makes them the worst team in the league for me, which may not make them objectively the worst team, is that they're just bad enough. They're just not bad enough or just good enough to give people hope. And I think that that's cruel.
Cruel and unusual punishment.
That's right.
No, and you know what? I think that does sum it up in a interesting perspective. I think they're scrappy, though, and I think that might be the better way to put it, because I think that they just stick around until they don't anymore. But
they're like that guy in wrestling who you want to root for, who always looks like he's going to get a win but never gets the win. Yeah, exactly like that. Like your Tony Gurria, like after 1977. Anyway, so Etling gets the start, but this game was mostly about Wes Hills. He had a crazy day. He had a power run. He did a crazy jump that he probably shouldn't have done a crazy jump, but I liked it anyway. Everyone was saying, don't do that again. But it wouldn't matter. The next run was Etling running, and he gets tackled. And commentary's like, hey, coaches, you got to be a little bit more cautious, a little less reckless with your calls. I mean, you're going to get your whole team killed. Nevertheless, as soon as commentary speaks, God laughs, and Hills rushes for a touchdown. And then we also have Mariner with a catch. So a successful conversion. It's 7-0 Michigan against Memphis. Pretty exciting stuff. But it doesn't stop there, because Memphis also does a little, razzle-dazzle. they have a fake punt and they get a first down also in the first half. I'm not even talking about Memphis.
Signs of life.
There's nothing to say about Memphis this person. Troy Williams, if he learned how to throw a little bit towards the end of the game, but the first 3 quarters, I'm not sure he completed a pass. There were times I looked at this game and said, I think I could be a better quarterback. And I can't. That's the thing. But maybe it wasn't out of the realm of possibility.
I just think he had some jitters. It was his first start. It took him a while to get in the swing of things. I think he's a guy that's a little bit more mobile, and I think you saw him a little stationary in the pocket. So I think as we see him play more, it might look a little bit better. But I definitely agree. It was rough at the beginning of the game.
Well, let's hope so for Troy Williams. Let's not hope so for me, who hates the Memphis Showboats. But talking about not having jitters and being mobile, Matthew Colburn with a big run for a touchdown. He just went down there. And then another successful conversion, but it was an illegal formation penalty. So they mixed the conversion on the second try, but it's still 13-0. So, okay. So we get the ball back to Memphis. They promptly throw another interception. Michigan goes down the field. They don't advance it too far, but they're certainly within Jake Bates' field goal range. I think it was 59, 58 yards, but he misses his first field goal of the year.
It was a sad, sad day to be a Jake Bates fan. I mean, it was a long field goal. I think you're at 58 yards. Maybe it was 59. Long field goal, but he's been drilling 65-yarders. So it was a letdown, but it'll only make him stronger.
Well, fear not Jake Bates and fear not Jake Lipp Men, because there was yet another turnover when Memphis was stripped of the ball by Michigan, and they advanced it to the 5-yard line, in which case Wes Hills once again ran right into there for his second touchdown rush of the day. Conversion missed again, of course, so it's 19-0 at this point. And then we get a fabulous catch by Davis, but it's I think his name is Daynard?
Daywood Davis.
Daywood Davis. So most of this catch was a run, and 82 yards, just fabulous.
Longest play of the year.
Yeah, it was long and it was great. So good for 6. They missed the conversion, of course. So it's 19-6 at the half. So Memphis is not out of it, being their cruel and unusual selves. But Michigan looks, for a team with their backup quarterback and not exactly sure what's going on, they're looking pretty solid. Plus they're on the road. They're at Memphis. Not a big crowd, not much of an advantage. So second half opens up with Michigan getting ball, and Etling has a rush touchdown. So Etling, scoring some points with his feet. Missed conversion, of course. So it's 25-6 at this point. We have a run by Michigan, and they lost the ball on the 2-yard line. So then we get a touchdown catch by Adams with another misconversion, which leads to it being 25-12 at this point. There's a defensive penalty, which leads to a first down for Michigan, despite all that. And they're moving along, and there's a big pass to Marcus Sims, who gets all the way to the 15. And then there's the third touchdown by Wes Hills with a 1-point conversion. It's 32. They have 32. Somewhere in there, Williams used his legs. He seemed to get his feet under him. He threw a pass to the tight end Surratt, who's been sort of both hero and GOAT for this team. He's caught some big catches, but he's dropped some big plays. There was a 2-point conversion that was missed. So it was 25-18 at some point. Then it became 32-18, and then there was another field goal, and the final was 35-18. So Michigan still in it, even with the backup quarterback at 3-2, and Memphis is 1-4, looking bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you said a lot of it right. There was a little bit more positive, I thought, in Memphis. I mean, early in the game, before that long Daywood Davis touchdown, the drive before, Daywood caught a nice pass, turned it upfield, started to run. He got it stripped. They fumbled and actually got recovered and ran back. And Troy Williams had to save a touchdown with his tackle. But I think a couple little shout outs to make. Breland Speaks. He started the game with that strip sack on Troy Williams. Breland Speaks, former Kansas City Chiefs player. He had a very good game. He was all over the field. And I think Jonathan Adams, he's consistently looked good for Memphis. And he had a great double move at one point in time. He was all over the field. He was a very shining star for them. He's a guy that I also think has NFL capabilities. And if not, he'll definitely be a mainstay in this league moving forward. But I think when you really look at it, I think this was the perfect matchup for Michigan coming in with your first game with your backup quarterback. And Danny Etling looked good. I mean, he spread the ball out throughout the team. He used his legs. He leaned on the running game, and they battled the whole game. And, Memphis's defense isn't terrible, and Michigan's offense isn't great. So it led to some really good matchups, and Danny Etling was able to persevere. And I think they scored 5 touchdowns to get to their 35 points. So, I mean, that just speaks to your efficiency as an offense, and that might be wrong. There might have been some field goals that I'm not remembering, but either way, they scored 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's very good for your first game with a backup quarterback, and I think this was the perfect matchup for them. And going into next week, I think they have some momentum, and we've talked about Michigan as that scrappy team that can play the spoiler, and I think Etling looked rough in his first little bits of playing time with E.J. Perry as a starter, but they kept doing what they were doing with E.J. Perry in the lineup, and I was very impressed with how they looked, and I think moving forward, they are a team to watch.
Yeah, and the fake punt was a bold call, and both of these offensive lines are much maligned, and I don't really get it with Michigan. I don't see that their offensive line is significantly worse than anyone else, but I thought their offensive line, especially the interior line, acquitted themselves very well in
this week for sure.
Yeah, so
they were able to run the ball very, very well.
Yeah, the guards and the centers, they were playing a rock solid game. I mean, I wasn't really paying that much attention to the tackles, but that's a good thing. You're only paying attention to the tackles if the quarterback looks like they're running for their life. So they were probably doing a good job too. And but the runs up the middle it was solid. So I don't know, that seems like they were getting a bad rap as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure who was saying they had it, but I heard it a few different places, and I don't know. I have to be honest with you, Jake. We started this show 8 weeks ago. We had 3 weeks of prep. Neither one of us watched the USFL or the XFL.
Not a lick.
We picked up this stuff bits and pieces. Week 1, we were all over the place. You were better than I was. But I think at this point, I have to say, I listened to the top 5, according to Apple, UFL podcast. Which doesn't mean that they're the best and then whatever, but they're probably the ones that are backed by corporation with the people who are the insiders. Our predictions and our picks and our analysis of these games is as good or better than any of those guys.
I would like to think, as a former backup quarterback myself, that I know the game of football, and I think we've done a good job. I mean, I think it just takes some astute eyes and a little bit of intuition, and I think this league is different than other leagues because you can really see the tendencies that these teams are going to do. And I think the football is just that. It's football. It's guys that are fighting for their job. It's not trying to make fancy highlights. It's just trying to look good and get tape so that way you can make it to the next level. And so it leads to aggressive football that's being played very hard. And I think it's fun to watch. It's fun to predict. It's fun to talk about. And I hope more people decide to watch the league so that way it doesn't fold.
I hope so too. I mean, very much so. So I think, at the mid-season point, I'm going to grade us as an A. So
know what? I'll give it a B+ because there's always room for improvement.
Well, there's still A+. So, but okay, that's fine.
We got to be harsh. You got to be your harshest critic.
All right.
And I'm mad. I went 2 for 2 last week. You can't tell me that I'm doing well and then me go 50%. So this week, predictions are going to be much better. But are we going to talk about the worst team in the league and the best team in the league halfway through now?
Yeah, I think that we should do like our midpoint, basically grades, and that's definitely worst team, best team, and
and what's in the middle.
Yeah, go ahead and start.
So I think when you look at it, there's a couple teams that record-wise are at the bottom. Arlington 0-5. We're talking about the DC Defenders at, I think they're 2-3, or are they 1-4? Memphis is 1-4. Houston is 1-4. So I think right there you have the clear bottom 4. And then record-wise, you have the clear top 4. Michigan 3-2. the Brahmas and St. Louis at 4-1, and then you have Birmingham sitting atop at 5-0. So I think you have a pretty clear distinction of where that middle point in the league is. And I think you said it pretty well. Like, I'm not certain Arlington is the worst team, even though they have the worst record at 0-5. They're definitely in the running. Don't get me wrong, they're in the running. But between Houston and Memphis and DC, because I really hate DC. I think they're terrible. I mean, you have 4 teams that could very easily be the worst. So I don't know if you have a little bit more definitive see. I think I need to think about this for another second or two.
I think that DC is definitely the most disappointing team.
Yes.
I think Arlington has a case to be made for that, but I never, they had a bad start last year, and then they got hot at the end, or lucky, or whatever it is. But I don't think Arlington is the worst team, despite the record. Now it's between Houston and Memphis, and everyone knows I'm wearing this shirt out of hate. I hate Memphis. I hate everything about that team. They're just terrible. But I actually think that Houston, based on what they have and what they should be, and they're just bad. I think that Houston actually is the worst team in the league.
And you know what? I was just thinking about it. I actually think I might take Memphis as the worst team. I think they have no running game. I think their defense is a letdown. And I think now that I'm thinking about it more and more, I think Memphis is my worst team. I think Arlington's my second worst team. And then I would put Houston, and then I'd put DC.
Okay. Well, we have a little disagreement as to the order of the badness, but the bottom 4 are pretty obvious as to where they are. And listen, Arlington might continue to lose, and we may just have to face reality that they are every bit as bad as their record is, but they don't play that bad. Anyway, so the top. This is tough. I mean,
it's rough.
I don't think San Antonio or Michigan are in as the best. I think San Antonio is the most surprising team, the most interesting in that they look interesting. They play more differently. Michigan is a little bit similar, but they're more of a traditional football team. I don't think either one of them, though, is in the best. I wouldn't be surprised if San Antonio beats anyone. I don't think Michigan can beat either St. Louis or Birmingham if they're, without a whole lot of breaks. I think that Birmingham, until they lose, until they are, when they play Martinez, they can run the ball. And when they can run the ball, with Martinez being essential in that run game, they throw enough, they're solid enough, their defense is good enough. St. Louis is exciting. St. Louis, it's 1A and 1B, and I'm not saying this with confidence, but it's not just based on a 5-0 record. But I do think that Birmingham is still the cream of the crop. Plus, I love their uniforms.
Yeah, and I think we might agree fully here, because I think Michigan is quite clearly the 4th team. I think San Antonio falls in as the 3rd team. I think Quentin Dormany's looked very good with them, so I think they can compete. But I think they're very clearly the 3rd team. And then you're really talking, like you said, 1A, 1B, St. Louis or Birmingham. And I think Birmingham with Martinez is definitely the best team in the league. But if they're going to keep flip-flopping back and forth, AJ McCarron on those weeks with Matt Corral, and maybe with Martinez, if you don't let the guy get in a rhythm, St. Louis is a really good football team. And they've got weapons galore. You've got a proven winner at AJ McCarron. And I'm not talking about winner of the XFL. I'm talking about national champion winner, 2-time. So I think it really is 1A, 1B. And I think St. Louis next week is going to be 1A with Corral and Birmingham as 1B. And I think it might flip-flop based off who's starting at quarterback. And that's not a slight at Matt Corral, because he's a great quarterback, but that team needs that mobility of Martinez.
Absolutely. Who's your MVP halfway through the league? Offensive, defensive, if you want to do that.
It's very interesting, because I think offensively, you've got guys like Adrian Martinez, who he's been a proven game changer, but he hasn't played every game.
Right.
So you can't really give him that award. And so I think it might be the easy answer, but if you can't give it to him, and none of the quarterbacks have really been standouts to me, I think you go to Hakeem Butler, who makes big play after big play. He has 5 or 6 touchdowns on the year, maybe even 7 at this point. He has a lot of yards. He leads the league. I think Hakeem Butler has been the biggest difference maker there's been on any team. There's no running back that stands out. And with no quarterback standing out to me, you got to give it to the best wide receiver.
Future Raven Hakeem Butler. It's hard for me to argue with it. I'm not really going to argue, but in football, the quarterback always gets it. So I'm going to give it to your guy AJ McCarron as the MVP halfway through.
This one throwing him the ball.
Yeah, that's true. Coach of the year so far.
Oh, coach of the year, I think by far has to be Birmingham. Oh, why am I drawing a huge blank? I'm going to have to cheat again here. Yes, because, I don't agree with it, but it's working. You can't tell me that anybody else is coaching a team better because we expected St. Louis to be elite. We expected them to be as good as they are. And Birmingham was, I don't want to say an afterthought, but they were, I think the top two teams heading into it nationally recognized was St. Louis and Arlington. Mm-hmm. And now Birmingham's, they haven't lost. So you have to do that. And I want to hear what you say, but I also want to mention defensive as well.
Oh, of course, we'll get to defense. See, the thing is, it's hard to argue with Skip Holtz and the success, but what he's doing with the quarterbacks makes no sense to me. It's so. I mean, I get that you maybe start with Matt Corral, but it became so obvious so early. So I'm going to go with Wade Phillips because I have no idea what this team is, and they do trick plays. They play confident. They play with swagger. They've had about every kind of problem you can have, including playing their backup quarterback. They've had their starting running back in and out of games, and they're just winning games. So I'm going to give it to Wade Phillips as coach of the year. Well, coach of the half season.
And you know what? I think that's a very fair, respectable answer. They were the biggest betting underdogs going into the season. Nobody expected them to be good. And even with losing your starting quarterback, being able to continue to win and compete, very impressive. And the Wade Phillips resurgence is real. But
I want to apologize to Coach Beck because week one I gave him a little brief for saying I love you to his team. Well, you know,
it works.
You know what? Maybe it's working. So go love your team. Give them a hug. I apologize, Coach Beck. I was wrong.
And you know what? All you need is love. But with that said, let's talk about defense because no pain, no gain. And I think when you're talking about defense, there's guys that across the league have been playing very well. I mean, a few names that stand out to me is my guy Peter Taumuapenu, Breland Speaks, Reuben Foster has been all over the field. DJ Swearinger's played well. And you've seen some other guys that have really stepped up. Sorry?
Feeney?
Yeah, Travis Feeney's played well. Malik, shoot, I'm really doing bad with my name remembering today. Malik Jackson, I believe, he's been playing very well off the edge. And I think that's a lot of guys that have been, making highlights and building up cases to be in the NFL next year. But the one that stands out to me is a current NFL superstar's older brother, Kai Nakua. I mean, the last 2 weeks, he's caught 2 different interceptions, both of which were not easy plays to make. He's been all over the field making tackles. I mean, Kai Nakua has really brought a imposing threat to their defense, and he's made his own mark. And this is a guy with a ton of NFL experience, and I think he'll definitely be back. And for me, he's the defensive MVP thus far.
Interesting. I mean, every time I see a big play, listen, there's been a bunch of defensive linemen, especially big D tackles that have been doing great things in the games, but I feel like a few of them are interchangeable. But whenever I hear something big going on, Feeney always seems to be in or around it. And the name that you say you can't pronounce, but you do a beautiful job pronouncing as far as I'm concerned. But so I'm going to say Pinocchio Latte.
Peter Taumuapenu.
Yeah, so for me, it was between those two guys, but I'm going to go with Feeney. I mean, Reuben Foster, when he's in the game, I remember, I think it was 1 week I said, if you could be the MVP on a losing team, it would be Reuben Foster, but he's been in and out of games, and the way Houston is playing, I can't even consider it. If I'm him, if people think I'm great, I'm just gonna stop playing and make myself eligible for the NFL and go, peace out, guys. It's not worth the health.
His ending with the NFL wasn't so great. So I think for him, this is a great way to rebuild his stock, and I think he's shown his potential. I mean, he was a very highly touted pick out of San Francisco. So I mean, he played in the Super Bowl with them. So I don't know. He looks like the great player that he is when he's on the field. And I think you're absolutely right. He's been injury prone.
Yeah. And even here, he's been sort of nicked up and hasn't. So, yeah. So those are my picks. I'm going to, this is no surprise. San Antonio is my surprise of the year because I'm shocked. I had no idea what this team was.
Yeah. And I mean, just for the sake of giving a differing opinion, because I think I'd agree. I said that they'd be good, but I didn't know that they'd be this good. But I think for me, the biggest surprise has been Arlington being terrible. I mean, I did expect Luis Perez to look good. I mean, back-to-back winners in the last 2 years, championships with the USFL. So I definitely thought that would be a different outcome for them. I mean, they have some offensive weapons. They have a good defense. They have home field advantage basically always because they're the only team that doesn't have to travel after games for practice purposes. So I don't know. That just is mind-blowing to me. But with that being said, is it time to make some Week 6 predictions?
Yeah, look at the time. We're only at an hour, and we're so we might get out of here at an hour and 10. So yeah, let's do it. What's happened in Week 6?
Yeah, and let's talk Week 6. I mean, there's a lot of good sports around. The Orioles are up 1-0 right now. So if you're watching right now, thank you for watching. Whether you're watching baseball, hockey playoffs, basketball playoffs. I mean, there's a lot of options. So thank you for watching us right now. And today we're going to talk about some games that finally are staggered again. We're not going to have back-to-back games on the same time. Wow, I'm really struggling with words today.
Yes, those simultaneous games in a league with only 4 games a week is just. Some guy said that there was a slot open at 10 o'clock on Friday, and that's a terrible slot. I'm like, it's better than running it simultaneously. There's plenty of people who are like, young adults or old adults. They get back from dinner 9:30, 10 o'clock, and maybe you want to watch a game. Maybe you're not ready to go to sleep. Maybe you'll go, I'll check out that ball game.
Or it's a Saturday night and you're at the bar. I mean, every bar is going to have whatever live sports on. So
maybe if you're at the bar.
Maybe. You never know. But come find me in Orlando. But with that said, Birmingham Stallions are playing in Memphis at 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time on ABC. I'll let you go first.
Losers. Birmingham wins.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to bore anybody a little in the sleep with anything else but Birmingham by a lot.
Right.
And it'd be by even more if Adrian Martinez starts, but I already know it's going to be Matt Corral.
Oh, Skip Holtz, you're killing me.
I mean, I get it. He wants both guys to get to the NFL, so credit to him, but play Adrian Martinez, please.
Win the games. I mean, he's winning all the games, so I mean.
It doesn't really matter at this point. And I don't think they're going to struggle this week. But 3 hours later at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in St. Louis, Missouri on Fox Network, you will see the Houston Roughnecks versus the St. Louis Battlehawks. And I think that this game is going to be just like every other St. Louis Battlehawks game this year. It's going to look closer than it should be, and then they're going to pull away at the end. St. Louis Battlehawks by multiple possessions.
No, listen, Houston is just DC, but slightly worse. And the Battlehawks destroyed DC on the road. They're at home. So the Battlehawks are going to win this game. And I don't know if it's going to be close for a while, but at the end it won't be.
In the Battle Dome with 40,000 fans, I don't think that they stand a chance to lose.
Cause the law.
And with that said, we move to Ford Field in Michigan, 1 p.m. Sunday, May 5th on Fox Network. Arlington Renegades versus the Michigan Panthers.
Oh, my goodness. Is this going to be Arlington's first win of the season? I'm going to go no. I think Michigan's going to win. I think Arlington, I think their ankles are sprained and their big toes are broken.
I might fall on my sword here. Give me Arlington to finally win.
Wow. Okay.
Michigan struggled. They struggled offensively. I think that they got the benefit of good matchmaking, and I think you're going to see a very motivated Arlington team because they can still make the playoffs very easily, just without losing the rest of the way. So,
very easily. Just do what they did in the first half, but reversed.
Exactly, and you go 1-0 each week, and eventually you're 5-0, which makes 5-5, which means you're competing for a spot. So I think they're do or die.
It's practically what they did last year, just so they're in a little bit of a deeper hole. Michigan folks, whatever happens, you're at Ford Field. There's no excuses. It's spring. It's beautiful. Go out to the game. You should have 15, 20,000 people in that stadium.
And I'm pretty sure they've had the worst attendance so far this year. So that's another reason why I think that this is a perfect game for Arlington to snap out of their funk.
It is. It is. This is a good game, and I really struggle with it. But I'm going to go with the Arlington. I know you don't like the violence, but I'm going with the pitchforks and torches and tomatoes and rotten eggs and the horrible smell of sulfur. And I think the whole team is going to be a bunch of stoops. They're all going to be stooped.
I mean, they're going to be stooped. But yeah, and with that said, I think actually all 4 road teams won last week.
They did. Nobody won at home. So that would mean what you just said is correct.
So, yeah, law of averages have not hit just yet. And I'm picking the away team again. So with that being said, in Washington, D.C., the San Antonio Brahmas will be playing the D.C. Always Defenders. And I'm going to go here quick. I'm just not a D.C. fan. Teamu's looking worse by the week. He needs some time in the pocket, and they don't do it. The Brahmas, if they're good at anything, they're good at defense and special teams, and that is right where DC's biggest flaws are. And I just Quentin Dormady is impressing me. So give me the Brahmas. DC is going to slowly but surely creep to the bottom of the standings.
Okay. I don't usually do upset specials, but it is at home. There's going to be a lot of people there. San Antonio's been pulling out a lot of stops. I think this is where things catch up to them. I think the DC Defenders, their defense is good enough to hold court. I'm picking DC in the upset to stay in the playoff hunt at a very mediocre 3-3.
And I think that means that we, again, are split on 2 picks this week.
We'll
see.
Indeed, we will. We'll see. We will know by this time next week, as it always is, and we'll have the ratings for week 5 next week, and hopefully more injury news, and maybe there'll be more clarification on this simultaneous games and how they measure the ratings and all that. I'm not sure how much it really matters. This is a weird one. The league is a little bit weird. I mean, Fox owns 50% of the league. The Rocks Group owns another 50%. The Rocks Group is either the managing partner or at least they're the agreed upon face of it. But, Fox is one of the broadcast partners, not the only. They are doing better than last year. I just don't know what's the return on investment. I was told that the $60 million we were told that the XFL loss was the sunniest picture is actually a lot more than 60 million. I don't know. None of this stuff is public, and I just hope that people go to the games and people watch the games and that we get a season 2. And because once you get a season 2, you tend to get, it becomes a habit.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's going to complain with more spring football. I mean, the wait between the Super Bowl in February and the start of the regular season in September, you get a little bit of preseason and training camp in August, but you don't get enough football. So year-round football is always a win. And I do think that if we can keep seeing some marginal improvements in the attendance and the TV ratings, I think they'll have no reason to not keep going with the football season. Or the football league. So I think we'll see moving forward. I think at this point in time, we need to just get some highlights. We need to get some good games going into the playoffs, a good championship. And I think that'll really set the UFL on the right foot. But I don't have too much else to say. I think this week was a very easy to talk about week of UFL football with some very clear and decisive victories.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need to belabor this. I do want to say to the stations that carry us and everything, I apologize. I don't have the list. Glenn is off this week. He'll be back tomorrow. So I don't know, which stations is carrying this. I know there's the 188 Yergs that is often on the screen. We didn't open up the call line. I think the show airs on 2 radio stations as well. But I will say that hopefully you will follow the Power or Normal Guys network, and that way you get this show, the Lipp Men on the UFL. You'll get all of Sportcat's shows, and you'll get all of his social media, including when he spins records as a DJ a few times a week, where he's allegedly playing rock and roll. But last week definitely started with a pop song. But there's also the Misfits, there's the Grid and Guardian Gang, and of course there's the sports show and Power or Normal Guys, which is also a show as well as the network. And if you're only listening on audio, well, you probably already figured it out, but you're on Power Normal Guys, and the Lipp Men on the UFL is also an audio as well as there. As I said, we're going to have 2 guests next week, and we'll talk about their show and their stuff, and we're hopefully going to do some more collaborations and maybe get some more guests during the course of the year. With that, Jake, why don't you tell the fine folks where you can be found and followed if you want to be found and followed?
Absolutely. Go find me on Twitter. We'll talk some MMA, football, sometimes Premier League, sometimes Champions League soccer. Really, I'm on a week off a week when it comes to Twitter. So come, let's get talking. Let's talk some sports. Don't really got much else to plug. So go check out all my father's a million different things he's about to tell you about.
Yeah, it's somewhere around there. So Garden of Doom. That's my baby show. And if you subscribe to Garden of Doom, you get Garden Views with it. Garden of Doom is sort of paranormal, things that go bump in the night, cryptids, scary stuff, interesting stuff, mythology, comparative mythology, alternate history. Garden Views is a similar variety, but it's definitely more grounded in legal, business, tech, sci, geopolitical, and straight history. Though there's some of that in Garden of Doom. It just sort of goes all over. My wrestling podcast, for those of you who like pro wrestling, Hammerlock Hangover. I've also done 4 legal shorts for the Wrestling Soup Network, so they're found on Wrestling Soup, and check out those guys. Thank you for hosting my shows as well there. And I just did a 4th one for them. I'm not sure when they'll drop it, but it's on the new FTC rule and some of the then latest developments on the Grant versus McMahon suit. Where else am I? I don't know. Sometimes on the Paranormal Guys, but you already know that because you're here. We got the UFL. Oh, Unpopular Review. We're doing a Raw watch-along. My other co-hosts are starting that any moment. I'm going to obviously have to catch up on the DVR, and I'll be joining them around 9:30, and we'll do a watch-along, but we won't be doing our review show after 11, so while I don't really like doing watch-alongs, I do like going to bed before 12:30. So bonus! And
extra hour of sleep right there.
That's exactly right. And I did make my surprise return, but it's not a permanent return. It was just a guest spot on the Hameen Media Group Pro Wrestling Coalition's Smack Attack this past Saturday. So if you want to check that out, go to either one of those fine groups. It's probably easier to find Hameen Media Group. It was me and Jimmy T and the Professor Chabelo Vero Cruz. Yes, the True Cross was there. And we talked, well, mostly about AEW, and then we eventually got around to WWE and SmackDown. And thank you, John Enright, for letting me be on your show while you were off. I think that's it. That's enough. But you can find me at Icarus Fell MD on X. There's also Evil Dose at Garden of Doom. If you want to find more evil content, that's where to find it. But those are my 2 X accounts, and both of us are on Facebook. And I don't know. That sounds like good to me. I think we covered it. What do you think?
That's all I got for today. There's a lot of stuff going on. So at this point, I know Glenn would play that cool little jam, but I don't know if Kyle in the back is going to do that too. But I want to give a quick shout out to Kyle. Thank you for helping put this together today and dealing with my technical difficulties at the beginning of this. I'm very happy that we could get this moving along here.
Absolutely. And Kyle, do you have a cool jam for us? Like the Little River Band, like Lonesome Loser or Cool Breeze or some sort of cool jam? I think that was saying, shut up, Jeff, no cool jam.
And here comes the music.
The White Man Overbite.